Fantasy football fans, listen up. It is not too late to join the 450,000 people that have already downloaded Draft this season. You get to play in a real live snake draft, but you're done in under 5 minutes. They last for just 1 week. You can join one right now for week 4. The best part, play for cold hard cash. All new players get a free entry into real money draft when you make your first deposit. But you do have to use the promo code PROS. That's right, play a real money game for free just by using the promo code PROS. And it gets even better. Draft is so sure that you're going to love it, they're offering our listeners a money-back guarantee up to $100. Just search Draft in your app store or go to draft.com/pros and play with a money-back guarantee up to $100 with promo code PROS. That's promo code PROS. What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am your host, Mike Tagliere, in the host chair again, solo hosting it. We'll have Bobby back here before long, guys. I know you guys are missing his hot takes. I am missing them as well. We had Dan Harris on for the Sit Start show yesterday, and today is going to be a DFS show. We're going to have an awesome guest today. He's one of my favorite people in the industry. Dave Kitchen of Fantasy Insiders is going to be joining us. But before we bring Dave on with us, last week, Bobby and I, we sat down and we did a draft with some of our followers, right? So when you guys follow us on the Draft app, you just download the app and you use the promo code PROS, and it's automatically going to follow Bobby and myself. And when that happens, when we start a contest every week, because we're going to do multiple ones every single week, Bobby and I actually just started one, and it's filling up as I'm speaking right now because I'm going to do this draft live with you guys right here during the show. We want to do that because we want to give you guys an idea as to how fast these drafts actually go and kind of the strategy behind it. And it's really interesting because I've done a few of them throughout the weeks now, and it makes you think on your toes. So I would recommend being prepared before you hop into one, because if you do, you're going to draft right away. It's actually about to start right now. So again, you guys, you get the money back guarantee by signing up using the promo code PROS. And then on top of that, you do receive alerts when Bobby and I start a contest. So this one right now that I'm doing right now, it has 9 other people in here with me, and they're all followers of mine. It filled up literally in about 15 seconds. So we're going to get started, and let's see who I get. It looks like I'm starting out with the number 7 pick, which I'm not fond of, but I mean, it worked out well last week. I think last week I picked number 7 and I wound up winning that league. So it's going down the board here. Kareem Hunt's gone. Gurley's gone. Ezekiel Elliott, I was hoping he would fall, but that's wishful thinking, right? It's already to me, guys. And that's what's crazy about it. So it's 30-second timers. You have to pick on your toes. Well, the one I had in my queue right here is AJ Green. I'm going to take AJ Green versus the Browns. I do like them, and I may look to grab Dalton later in this draft just because I feel like he's going to last till the 5th round. All it is 5 rounds. You're going to pick 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, and 2 wide receivers. That's it. That's basically, I mean, there's really nothing to it. In the wide receivers, you could choose tight ends, but they usually last until like the 4th or 5th round. So don't really worry about them too much. I am 1 pick away, and Le'Veon Bell is still on the board. Going against the Ravens, I'm not a big fan of the matchup, but getting Le'Veon Bell in the 2nd round seems kind of like a steal. I want to get a workhorse running back here. Of course, Bell goes. So Bell's gone. I'm going to have to go to my fallback option here. I'm not really excited about it, but I'm going to go with Melvin Gordon. He's got a bone bruise on his knee, but Philadelphia, we're going to talk about it during the DFS show. I don't want to give too much away, but he did receive an upgrade in his matchup recently. So I'm going to take Melvin Gordon here and pair him with AJ Green. Again, it's going to give me some time to kind of look at these players while I'm waiting for my next pick. I'm just not a big fan of Melvin Gordon this week, guys. And I know I just picked him in this draft, but that's what I mean is that you're kind of on your toes. And the best part about this draft is that when you're going through it, you know how ADP, people usually just go right by ADP. These projections are a little bit different that you might expect from other websites. So, you might have to scroll down because I didn't even realize it. Odell Beckham was still on the board when I made that pick. So if I could go back, like 45 seconds ago, I would take Odell Beckham and pair him with AJ Green and then worry about my running backs the next round. I'm really upset with myself about this one, but I'm waiting until it comes back to me. My targets here in this next round, the running back position, I feel like we can wait and get Chris Carson or Joe Mixon as our second running back, but I'm hoping DeAndre Hopkins falls. Hopkins is one of my favorite targets this week going against Tennessee Titans defense. The secondary is really weak, really weak. Logan Ryan's probably the best part of it, and Logan Ryan plays the slot for them. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't travel into the slot too often, so this could be a week where he sees a ton of targets. If he falls to me, I would be pretty happy. Quarterbacks are starting to come off the board here in the third round. Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Matt Ryan just went. All right, Golden Tate's gone. My pick. I get to take DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins lasted after Golden Tate, so that makes me happy. And by the way, Hopkins was down on the list a little bit, so if you're doing a draft this week, DeAndre Hopkins, make sure you scroll down a little bit because you just might miss things like this. It's going fast here, guys. So Brandon Cooks, Keenan Allen are off the board. Carson Palmer goes, which leaves me with a decision to go, do I go with Jordan Howard here, CJ Anderson, or Joe Mixon? This is the choice I have. I'm going to go with Jordan Howard simply because, it's a Thursday night contest, whatever. I want rooting interest in my Bears. I'm having fun in this contest. I hope one of the listeners win. I'm here to compete for sure. And I think Howard could have a solid week. It seems like Mike Daniels of the Packers may be out another week. He was downgraded. Randall Cobb, they said he's going to play, but they downgraded Mike Daniels to where it doesn't seem like he's going to play. And the Packers just simply don't have a solid defensive line without him there. He's the biggest cog in the middle of the machine. So as of now, my team, I'm not really excited about it. I mean, and I know that sounds weird. I just did this draft and I'm not excited about it. That's why we do mock drafts and stuff, but that's the beauty of this, right? Is that we do these drafts, we get better, we understand who we like, who we don't like for DFS purposes. And as of right now, I'm okay with my team, but just not in love with it. I have AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins as my 2 wide receivers. That's awesome. Like I think I have both of them as top 7 wide receivers this week. And then I go to my running backs and I'm kind of like, okay, Melvin Gordon comes with some risk against Philly, and then Jordan Howard against Green Bay. I'm really not excited about my running backs in this team. So maybe if you were to take something from me, snag 1 wide receiver and maybe a running back in the first 2 rounds, hopefully not Melvin Gordon, just because I just think that there's too much risk there. All right, it's coming back and it's going to be my final pick here. And as you guys can see, this was literally all done live, and I think it's been 3 minutes or something like that. I forgot to check the time, but it's like 3 minutes that it's taken me to do this draft. And the quarterback options I'm down to here are Phillip Rivers and Andy Dalton. There's a couple picks left here. Let's see if Dalton lasts. So they're both there for me. I don't know if I want to take Andy Dalton or Phillip Rivers here. I feel like I'd have too much in the Chargers basket if I take Rivers, because I have Melvin Gordon and they kind of limit each other's upside. So instead of doing that, I'm going to pair Andy Dalton with AJ Green and just hope that those two go off and carry my team. So that wraps up this draft, guys. That's how fast these things go. And again, if you guys go to draft.com/pros, you are automatically going to be assigned to follow me. And when I send a notification, all I do is I create a contest, you get a notification, and jump in right away, guys, because they do fill relatively quick. And I'm going to do a couple of these throughout the week. So just pay attention, get the notifications on your phone, and we should be ready to rock. Obviously, we are now at the time where we get to talk some DFS. I know who I like after doing some of these drafts, so let's get into the show. All right, guys, joining us, as I mentioned earlier, is David Kitchen of Fantasy Insiders. Dave, thanks for coming on, my friend. How you doing today?
Doing good. Fantasy Insiders and RotoGrinders now. Don't get me in trouble, Mike.
I know you're living that corporate life, man.
I'm living the corporate life now. Don't get me in trouble by not mentioning the parent company these days.
Let me redo that. Dave of Fantasy Insiders, as well as RotoGrinders, thecorporatelife.com. No, Dave, thanks for joining me. You're one of my favorite guys in the industry to talk to. It's weird because you're on the other end of this. You're usually hosting podcasts, not the other way around, right?
Yeah, I was the first one to ever host a podcast. So, I've tried not to be bitter with everyone else hosting a podcast these days, but I was the first one.
Oh my God, this has started off just fantastic, guys. So we brought in Dave. He's obviously someone who does DFS and pretty much only DFS. So we're going to talk to him about some of our favorite plays this week. He does a lot of FanDuel. I do a lot of DraftKings. So you're going to get a mix of both sites today. Dave, let's start at the quarterback position and talk about some of the favorite plays you like. Let's pretend that someone wants to pay up at quarterback this week. Is there one of the guys you like an awful lot?
I mean, the thing with DraftKings is on FanDuel, you can go a variety of different ways. The thing on DraftKings is I usually go cheap as far as cash games. There's a lot of options in that $5,000 to $6,000 range. Obviously, you don't have Aaron Rodgers on the main slate because of the Thursday night game. I mean, pricing on DraftKings has been so tight for the past 2 weeks. So you have to go cheap at least at 2 wide receiver positions to go expensive at the quarterback spot. But, I think that if I had to spend up, I would just go with Tom Brady. Like, there's no reason not to go away from Tom Brady right now. Their defense has not been very good, which has meant that they have to do more stuff on offense. You did have the whole Gillislee 3-touchdown game against the Chiefs to start off, but you look at just how effective Tom Brady has been. he can do whatever he wants on the football field. So if you're paying up for quarterback, he's $8K. And again, you have to basically go cheap at two positions or pair him with like a Hogan and go cheap, like close to minimum salary, $4K for a wide receiver position. But he would be the guy that I would spend up on for sure.
Now, so for me with Brady, my concern is that the Panthers aren't going to score points. And I know that you mentioned in regards to, their defense being so pathetic. I think that's the best word I could use to describe their defense to start the season. They just allowed the Houston Texans to come in New England and post solid totals. The question is Cam Newton over the first 3 weeks, their team has posted 23 points against the 49ers, 9 against the Bills, and 13 against the Saints. So could this be a get-right spot where the Patriots defense needs to get right? They're at home. Is this a game where they don't necessarily need to throw as much? James Bradbury, they may stick on Brandon Cooks. So Chris Hogan, Rob Gronkowski. There's options here, right? James White had a down week last week, so I have no issue paying up for Brady if that's what you want to do. But I'm with you, Dave, in the fact that I don't want to pay up at quarterback this week just because you mentioned with the pricing being so tight. And this week, there's some values at running back we're going to talk about. I want to pay up for wide receivers. I think there's going to be some big name wide receivers having some massive weeks. So instead, I would look to go down in price range. One of my favorite mid-price guys is Dak Prescott. It's $6,200 at home against the Rams. The start of the season for him has been a weird one, right? Like he's gone on the road a few times to play against they played against the Giants, the Broncos, the Cardinals, and now he's finally getting a Rams defense that, was in a shootout last Thursday night against the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm liking Dak Prescott at 6,200. Is there someone in the mid-range that you feel like you'd play over Dak, or do you think that this is the first matchup that they can really exploit? Des Bryant can get the targets. He doesn't have a number one corner following him around the field. Like maybe even Dalton at 5,800. I kind of like those two in that range.
Yeah, I think if I had to go that mid-tier, it would be Dak Prescott. I mean, he has been, you look at the first three opponents that he has gone up against, those are three solid teams, and he's still been a top 12 quarterback. And you look at what I think this is like a squeaky wheel type of game for him. I think that you're going to see Dak Prescott continue to do what he has done before. The only thing that concerns me a little bit is pace of play. So, if they can control the as far as like having it up tempo, Dak needs another rushing touchdown probably in this range. But yeah, if I'm going mid tier, it would be Dak.
I think it's a weird spot, right? Is that I think Dak has upside, but at the same time, Ezekiel Elliott is like, it's hard to say that he won't have a massive game against this Rams defense. That's kind of like, even with Aaron Donald on the field, they've been really weak against the run. That's why it's like going down to Andy Dalton looked appealing to me. Like if you're talking cash games, here's the question. Do you go Dak, who's got a solid floor? We know that. Or do you go with Dalton, who's going against a Browns team? But there's news that's come out today that Myles Garrett has returned to practice. And if he's playing, this Browns pass rush gets a little bit better. And Andy Dalton doesn't exactly have solid blocking on his blind side. So would that lower him to the point where you're like, no, I'm avoiding Dalton altogether? Would you go down to someone like, say, Tyrod Taylor, who's going into Atlanta, playing in a game on turf? I mean, the Falcons are not a shutdown defense by any means. They're involved in a lot of shootouts. They do control the ball an awful lot, which is usually limiting the plays in the opposing team. But at the same time, the Bills defense has been pretty respectable under Sean McDermott. So let's talk through our way through this. Dalton, Tyrod, how do you compare those two?
I'm like not quite all the way in, but I am almost all in on Tyrod Taylor this week. I think where his price is on both FanDuel and DraftKings, it is just too good of a spot to fade. You talk about, Atlanta, how many passes they have against them, and Tyrod Taylor is going to have to pass the ball. He's also, the rushing yards just are a bonus. So I think anybody in his tier, the tier around him, is going to be, he gets the edge because of what he's done with his legs. But Tyrod Taylor, Charles Clay, those are two guys that have been either Clay or Evan Ingram for the tight end position. But I'm looking at Tyrod Taylor to be that guy. His price tag is way too cheap. If I need to come off Tyrod Taylor, where for some reason I need $100 on a GPP team, I do think that Trevor Siemian is in a very good spot against these two terrible corners in this bad this bad pass defense that Oakland has at home there in Denver. So I think I think Simeon and Demaryius Thomas and Manny Sanders are excellent options as well for like a GPP stack. But I think Tyrod for me is going to be the cash game quarterback, and I might not even hedge off that, which typically I'm all about that hedge life.
Yeah, I'm with you. At the same time, some people ask me, they're like, wait, you have more than one cash game lineup? I usually have like 80% in one lineup, and then I'll hedge like 20% in a different lineup. And it may have the same quarterback sometimes, but this week I've been really torn to go with either Dalton or Tyrod. Deshaun Watson really interests me at 5,100. And the reason he interests me is because, he's a guy that's been kind of moving out of the pocket a little bit quicker than he probably should. You see him make rookie mistakes, sure. But what this kid wants to do is he wants to go to DeAndre Hopkins. You saw the Patriots last week try to shift coverage over to his side of the field, and it kind of essentially not took him away, but forced Deshaun Watson to kind of learn to throw to other players on the team, and he succeeded because of it. The Titans, if there's one area of that defense that really lacks, it's their pass rush and their secondary. The secondary is atrocious. They don't have a cornerback. Like Adoree Jackson and Bryce McCain, that's who they're going to match up with DeAndre Hopkins. So it wouldn't shock me if DeAndre Hopkins sees 15 targets this week. I know you're from Tennessee, so what's your take on Deshaun Watson this week? Do you think that at 5,100, I felt like he was cash game viable as well?
Yeah, he's in that tier with Simeon and Tyrod Taylor. At home, against, you mentioned Adoree Jackson being a guy that is explosive in the pass returns or in the kickoff returns. You saw what he did at USC, but in coverage, like he has not graded out that well as a cornerback. So I do expect him to go early and often. Again, the thing that would concern me is just like the pace of play. How long does Tennessee control the ball? And Deshaun Watson, there's just something about a cash game quarterback that's a rookie like Deshaun Watson. When you have a guy like against Tyrod Taylor. So for me, I would put him at number 3, but I don't have a problem if anyone wants to go Watson in their cash games, just because the range of outcomes with a quarterback is not that much where you have to spend up. Like you're going to make your money at the other positions, as long as the quarterback just is not absolutely, the bid.
Right. And I think Watson,
I don't know if I can cuss on here. I don't know if I can say crap. Can I say crap?
You could say crap. Crap's good.
Okay.
I mean, we're both living corporate life in a way, but we have some leniency. We're okay. I say sucks. I say stuff like that all the time. So it happens. I know my mom would be mad at me. I'll just say that. One player I want to mention before we move on, Phillip Rivers. I think he's very interesting this week. I think people overlook him because he's at a weird price point where people will go down to Dalton or Tyrod, or they'll go up for Brady. Whereas Phillip Rivers sitting in the middle against a Philadelphia team that, again, their secondary without Ronald Darby, they don't really have an answer for anybody. They tried shadowing Odell Beckham Jr. last week with Jalen Mills, and we all know how that ended. Fletcher Cox is also going to be out for them. I know This is an upgrade for Melvin Gordon, but there's question marks about Melvin Gordon, and the fact that he's got a bone bruise on his knee, the one that caused him to miss time back in his rookie season, that shut him down for the year. So,
and this rush defense is decent, and like you said, Melvin Gordon's got, like, if you look at Melvin Gordon's legs, how skinny they are.
Oh God!
And he gets so much volume. I just think that this is going to be a situation where they're going to have to throw, and it's not just Keenan Allen. Now they have Tyrell Williams and they have Travis Benjamin, who's been featured heavily.
Yes.
The first 3 weeks. So with those guys, with Antonio Gates, and even, who would have thought that Hunter Henry would be the 5th option? Didn't even get any targets. He just is an
2 of 3 games now.
Yeah,
2 of 3 games, no targets.
Right. So you take a look. He goes from 0 catches to 7 for 80, and then 0 targets. It's just crazy. So he's just the extra icing on top. It'd be great. One of the things is great for Phillip Rivers is when he gets behind in games. So it'd be great if somehow they could get behind in this game where they wouldn't need to. But I think this is definitely a situation where they will have to pass, and it could definitely be a 300-yard game with the bonus for Phillip Rivers.
For sure. And like I said, he falls in that weird price range where I don't think he's going to be really heavily owned. Stack him with someone maybe like Tyrell Williams or Travis Benjamin. Again, keep riding that train because the kid's doing well. Travis Benjamin has just 5 less fantasy points than Keenan Allen does in the season. I don't think many people really realize that. But let's go to running back. For me, at running back, if I'm paying up, Ezekiel Elliott and LaShawn McCoy look really good. McCoy is interesting to me because I feel like he's going to be a lower owned option with the way that the last couple weeks have gone. But He's now off the injury report. They're saying that he's not nicked up at all. His wrist is okay and all that stuff. In a game against Atlanta on turf where he's game script proof, like let's say that they shut down Atlanta's offense, which I really don't see happening. Obviously, he's going to be getting tons of carries. I don't see that happening. I think LeSean McCoy gets a lot done through the air this week. What do you feel about LeSean McCoy, Ezekiel Elliott, or is there somebody else at the top of the running back price chart that you like better?
Yeah, since we can't play Kareem Hunt this week, you look at the top, it's Zeke and it's McCoy. And I'm trying to get both of these guys in the lineup. You also have Devonta Freeman for like $1,000 difference. It's also there, but I think you have a couple of running backs there, those positions where you can save. But Zeke seems like he's pretty safe going up against the Rams, and LeSean McCoy, you mentioned it. I think he's gonna have to do a lot through the air there in Atlanta. I think he gets heavy usage, and I agree. I don't think he's going to be the chalk. In fact, I was on the SiriusXM show, the RotoGrinders SiriusXM show yesterday, and like Dan Bach was like, he's going to be the chalk, right? And I'm like, I don't think he's going to be the chalk, right, but I think he is a very good play. And I'm not even sure the difference between him and Zeke. For me, I'm trying to get both of them in a lineup with Bilal Powell.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. So my only concern with Zeke is that this is a game where they get Dez the ball, because Dez has been, like I said, he's been blanketed by cornerbacks throughout the first couple weeks, and he's getting a slight break here. Tremaine Johnson isn't like the worst cornerback in the world, but he's also not a guy that can shut down Dez. Like Dez is a monster, especially when it comes to the goal line, and that's the worry about Zeke this week. Like they may just take it light on him. They don't need to use him necessarily. But the reason I want to love Zeke is because if you look at the carries that people have totaled against the Rams through the first 3 games, the Colts run game, 22 carries, the Redskins, 36 carries, the 49ers, 32 carries. So the play counts are obviously up. Teams don't need to throw it. The game is in Dallas. Zeke has, he's had a couple tough matchups too. And it's like, that's where it's like him and McCoy. The tidbit I have on McCoy for you is that the Falcons, just through 3 weeks, they've already allowed 25 receptions, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air to running backs. So LeSean McCoy is definitely up there. And I think Bach might be right in terms of that. I mean, it's really weird because Le'Veon Bell, nobody's going to want to play Bell this week because he's going up against the Ravens, and that's an interesting dynamic itself. And I'll ask you about that. Okay, so I've talked about this on our last podcast. What do you put into it that the fact that the Ravens, the 8th oldest team in the NFL, are coming back from London? Most teams, I don't want to say most teams, all teams that have played over there before have had their bye week right after. They're coming back, 7 days later. They're playing a divisional game against the Steelers, who are not a walk-on opponent by any means. How do you feel about this game between those two? Is Le'Veon Bell going to be under-owned? Do you think you should, if you're playing in multiple tournaments, do you think you should have exposure to Le'Veon Bell?
Absolutely. I said this on the show. He is going to have the lowest ownership percentage that you'll be able to get him at in a long time. It is the absolute nut spot for a GPP lineup with Le'Veon Bell, because he's still, you look at it, he still has almost half of the team's touches. It's just the yards have not come. As far as like why that is, there's a few different theories out there, including D'Angelo Williams, as far as the team punishing him. I don't buy that at all. No. But as far as like going forward, if you keep on giving him the rock, like he's going to get, like we've seen what he can do. And I think a lot of it's actually tied to Ben Roethlisberger. Like Roethlisberger has to get better, and they have to put this offense in better shape for more Lev Bell red zone touches. But I love Le'Veon Bell for a tournament play, and he is going to be severely under-owned. As far as cash, there's just, for his price range, it's difficult because he hasn't produced, and these other guys have produced, and I think that it's a tough sell to play Le'Veon Bell on the road in Baltimore in cash contests when there are other good matchups out there.
I agree 100%. And so I've gone through NFL's next gen stats, and it's like one of my favorite things like this. So they have chips in players' shoulders, and basically they're tracking where these players are out in the field, how close defenders are to them, all this, right? And Le'Veon Bell, one of the interesting stats I came across in that, with Martavis Bryant healthy, Antonio Brown in the field, obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster out there, Le'Veon Bell has only seen stacked boxes 9.6% of the time, which is the third lowest in the NFL. So the offensive line has had a few nicks on it. They've lost a couple players. They were missing DeCastro last week. So they're going to get healthy. They're going to get better. This run blocking has typically been really good. This year it hasn't necessarily been to this point. But I do think Le'Veon Bell bounces back at some point. I don't know if I bet on it happening in Baltimore, but I think Dave's right in the fact that he's a good GPP play, where I definitely wouldn't play him in cash. Go down to McCoy or Elliott instead of that. I'm fading Todd Gurley, man. I know that's going to be like a hot
I know
play.
That was my next guy I was going to ask you about, because I think he might be sort of chalky as well.
He is going to be chalky.
Him and Freeman are like that next level where I think it's going to be easy to get. So I had like a couple 2v2 choices as far as it was. I want to say it was like McCoy and Demaryius Thomas, or Freeman and Keenan Allen, as far as like 2v2s, because you can go down like for $1,000 more to Devonta Freeman, and then Gurley's there as a guy who has just been getting so much love. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to hedge a few shares with some Todd Gurley.
It's probably not the worst idea with the way he's played
hedge
recently.
Life. There's nothing wrong with hedge life.
There's not, but we have to be bold, and I'm standing on this. And I was a guy that told people to buy Todd Gurley before the season. Like, I was saying, I don't care what he did to you last year. Get him on your team, draft him. He was a steal in the late second round, sometimes going into the third round. But I am also telling people right now to sell him. His schedule for the next 2 months is brutal. This week against Dallas, it's not to say that Dallas is the same defense that they were last year. They're absolutely not. But where you beat them is in the secondary. And if Sammy Watkins can get on the field, it's going to, I think he's in line for another wide receiver 2 type week. I just don't see any way that Todd Gurley totals 18 to 20 carries in this game. He's going to get some work in the passing game, which is going to keep him in that RB1 territory. But again, I'm not betting on him continuing to score at this rapid pace. He's just seen so much work, and they could get game scripted out of this. And we've seen the Cowboys before. They play this ball control style offense, and the Rams can do nothing about it. That's why I'm fading Gurley this week.
But he might even get, if they do control the ball and they do go up. I mean, you just look at what Gurley has done. I think he can also get it done through the air. And people are pointing to Dallas like not being bad against the run. But football is such a game of small sample sizes. Mm-hmm. You look at 2 of the first 3 opponents that they've had, and they're not good. It's the Giants and the Cardinals, 2 of the worst rushing offensive attacks in the league right now. And so I'm not buying into Dallas having this huge run stoppage going on there. And I think Gurley's getting so much love that it's, if you fade him and have 0 hedging shares, then proceed with caution, my friend.
Kitchen is living that hedge life. I'm pretty much
what I do. I take so I'll have like 4 or 5 running backs, and I'll take like 2 or 3 teams with each of those guys. Like football is such a variance-based sport.
Oh, yeah.
We have seen that the first 3 weeks, bigger than everything. You take, like, last week I got so lucky, and I had a bunch of friends that they got crushed, and I crushed it, and I couldn't even brag because they were having such bad days. But like, I got lucky with Kareem Hunt, I got lucky with going all in on FanDuel on Devontae Parker, and he did nothing until the last drive against a prevent defense. Like, variance plays such a large part. You have to, if you're playing any significant volume, my opinion is you have to at least hedge a little bit with some shares of the core guys that you like. End rant.
Well, especially the ones that are chalk. Like, you can't just sit there and have 0 exposure to the chalk, because if the chalk hits, then you're kind of screwed. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. So if you're playing multiple tournaments, yeah, sure, have a little bit exposure, but this is a week where I would avoid Gurley if possible, especially if you're setting just a couple lineups. Going down a little bit, because again, Kitchen, I say this, and I really want to spend up a wide receiver. I know we're going to get into those guys, but let's talk about some like outside of this elite territory. Christian McCaffrey is going to be considered someone like chalk, 6,800 on DraftKings. He's going to catch a lot of passes. The Patriots defense has been pathetic this far. They've allowed 98 receiving yards to Kareem Hunt, 51 yards to Alvin Kamara, and then even Deontay Foreman, 65 yards last week. So it's easy to see McCaffrey getting up there, close to double-digit targets, racking up 50 to 75 receiving yards. But for $100 cheaper, you can get Fournette against the Jets. Which of these two would you play? Obviously, Fournette is catching 2-3 passes a game. He's not like a PPR monster, but this is also the first game that he has had in a plus matchup. Every team that he has played this far was a top 10 run defense last year. Going to play the Jets without Sheldon Richardson, I think people are going to be scared off of him just because of what happened to Jay Ajayi last week. But with Ajayi, I happen to think that this guy's playing hurt.
Yeah, I do too. I've been on fade team Ajayi all preseason, all season long. If you have any season long shares, you trade them. You trade them now, get whatever you can for him, because especially with no bye week, I don't see him going 16 straight weeks with a bum knee that he has. Fournette though, I like him. I like Christian McCaffrey. I've got a big crush on C-Mac, have ever since I played daily fantasy college football. But Fournette against the Jets, it's not an issue like Ajayi where they're going to go away from Fournette. You look at this defense, I think the defense is going to give the Jets fits. And the bottom line is any sort of opportunity that's going to be there, Fournette is going to be there to take advantage of it. Christian McCaffrey, his value comes down to basically not having receiving options potentially for Cam Newton and just check down stuff. I like them both, but if I had to choose one, it'd be Fournette.
Nice. I like it. So as mentioned, I want to go cheap at running back if I can fit these wide receivers in. So let's talk some cheaper, even lower than these guys. I want to go down to Joe Mixon. I don't know if he's cash game viable. 5,700 feels like kind of expensive. I'm just saying, I feel like this guy's going to finish as a top 5 running back this week. Cincinnati needs a win, man. Extremely bad. Cincinnati or Cleveland, they're going to be without Jamie Collins, it seems like, again this week. If they get back Myles Garrett, then that's going to hurt the pass rush. But Joe Mixon on the field, man, an awful lot. I think he had 21 touches last week. How do you not like him?
For tournaments, he's okay. You said something about cash and Mixon. And
yeah,
as a Mixon guy, listen, I would love to. You still can't trust that offense, though. And you can't trust for what his tag is. You can't touch or you can't trust that he's going to outperform some of these other guys. Like I like my guy's Bilal Powell this week.
Yeah, he's on my list for sure.
And I think also Mark Ingram. A lot of people are high on him.
Mm-hmm.
So like those two, I'd rather have those two guys and pair them with two good running backs than risk it with Joe Mixon, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that offense. He's a high risk, high reward type play. I love him for GPPs. Like I love the idea of having a Bell and Mixon team, because you know that those guys are explosive guys that could any moment rip off a long one. And that being said, you just have to take into the risk consideration of not knowing what's next. I can't advocate Mixon for cash.
Does Chris Carson fall into that same category then?
Yes. Screw DraftKings for not including the Sunday night football game. I love Chris Carson so much. I have him in almost all my best ball leagues and my seasonal leagues. And so, the Buck Allen and Chris Carson things have been like very lucky for my teams. Chris Carson now, especially with Procise being out, surprise there. Chris Carson at home against the Colts is going to eat so much. On FanDuel, I have him in my cash game lineup right now.
Yeah,
like,
I don't fault you.
That's how much I love Chris Carson. And there's a lot of good running backs this week, but Carson's a guy that I love. So if you're playing the old Sunday night, Monday night slate like DraftKings wants you to, be a good little boy and just make sure you get the free square that is Chris Carson.
All right. So I love that you mentioned Mark Ingram. He was actually on my list. Bilal Powell and Mark Ingram are the last ones on my list. And also I put Kamara there with Ingram because I think it's interesting if Adrian Peterson's out. Because Adrian Peterson, if you guys haven't heard, he missed practice today. He apparently wasn't even there. So they're saying it was a knee injury on top of a Veterans Day of rest. I honestly thought, because this game is obviously taking place in London, and it's a morning game, so it's a different slate, but if Adrian Peterson is not at practice in London, what is he doing there? I started to think, did they send him home? Like, is he getting cut? Like, are they going to let him go? Because it seems like it's the beginning of the end for Peterson. It may already be the end, not the beginning of the end, but the actual end. And if Mark Ingram, here's what most people don't realize. Mark Ingram last year played 46% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. Yep. Let that sink in for a second. He finishes a top 10 running back. this year, the Saints offense wasn't really clicking until last week. Last week, they got on track against Carolina. Everything looks good. They flew out to London immediately at the beginning of the week. They are not going to have any lag with them. They're playing a Miami defense that's not necessarily stacked at linebacker. Their front, they have a better pass rush than they do a run stopping defense. So I happen to think Mark Ingram's a really sharp play. This year, he's playing 49% of the snaps. So he's actually playing more this year, guys. Mark Ingram is one of the best buy lows in season long right now. You can get him for absolutely nothing because nobody wants to play him. And if Peterson is out, I think Alvin Kamara is interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, I love Alvin Kamara. I've been a big fan of his since college. I was bummed when the Saints drafted him just because I was like, why do they need him? Like, let him go to a team that could utilize his skill set as a pass catching back. But sure enough, he's already kind of claimed some of those shares. I think Kamara is a good tournament play, but Ingram is a value play. And I don't even think I'm not sure how owned he's going to be. Now, keep in mind, this is for the Sunday morning through Monday slates because unfortunately, you can't play him on the main slate because the London game. That's the thing. The Thursday, I know we're recording this on a Thursday, but the Thursday through Monday slate is absolute fire because you've got Tariq Cohen, you've got Mark Ingram, you've got Chris Carson, and you've got Kareem Hunt. 4 running backs that are not in the main slate that are absolutely playable on DraftKings. So if you're playing that all-day slate or the Sunday early to Monday night slate, you got to factor in those guys. And someone like Ingram, they allow you to play the wide receivers that we talked about. But Bilal Powell is the other guy, same price as Ingram. And you look at what he did last year without Forte. I was shocked week 2 when Elijah McGuire got more touches than Bilal Powell.
Mm-hmm.
Shocked.
It was frustrating is what it was.
But I think last week we saw that correct itself with Forte being gone. And, the hope is that they get down.
McGuire fumbled. So that he might be in the doghouse for a rookie. Like we've seen coaches do this before. And Bilal Powell in the games, like the last 4 games of the season last year with Matt Forte out or limited for those games, Bilal Powell was the number 2 running back behind Le'Veon Bell. Yeah.
I mean, this is a tough matchup for him. But again, the hope is that somehow the Jaguars, like they run it up or get ahead by a couple of touchdowns where Bilal Powell is used in the passing game. That's where he really excelled last year.
For sure.
So as far as like the number of snaps and the percentage of touches, if he can continue getting over half of the team's touches and playing, 3/4 to 80% of the snaps, then that's going to produce value at his current price tag.
For sure. All right, guys. So if you guys are listening to this show and you have not played DFS yet, if you've played DFS, doesn't even matter. Guys, if you haven't, go to Twitter right now. Follow me if you don't already, at Mike Tagliere NFL. Yesterday I posted, we are doing a free DraftKings contest for our listeners. Go there, check it out. All you do is click on the link. If you haven't played yet, sign up and you're entered in for free. It is, I think, up to $5,000 in prizes, guys. Just go check it out. Again, at Mike Tagliere NFL. It's on my post from yesterday. And also, while you guys are at it, go check out pristineauction.com. That is PRISTINE auction.com. Guys, we've talked about it in this site. I used them before they were even a sponsor. I can't say enough about this website. Go there, check them out. When you register, you do it absolutely free. You don't pay anything. All you do, there's daily auctions, there's weekly auctions. You find the item that you want. They have something for every single NFL team. This is like, when the kids go shopping for Christmas, this is where adults go shopping for Christmas. All we do is that when you go there to register, let them know that Fantasy Pros sent you. That way we're able to keep doing these giveaways. Right now we have a Mike Evans signed jersey that we are giving away. All we ask you to do, go to iTunes, leave a review, take a screenshot of that, and send it into contest at fantasypros.com. If you do that for us, you will be automatically entered into all future contests. pristineauction.com. It's going to bring the kid out in you. All right, Kitchen, I love wide receivers this week. I'm just going to throw my top 3 wide receivers on the board and tell me if I'm wrong in these. I want to play Julio Jones at home against Buffalo for 8,800. I feel like Julio, he's a team guy, but it would not shock me if behind closed doors, Julio said, hey guys, I really want to get the ball a little bit more. I feel like they've been wasting him in the prime of his career. And I know that he's the all-time leader in yards per game, but I feel like we just scratched the surface with Julio Jones and how good this kid is. Michael Thomas in that London game, again, this is a different slate, but 7,300, that's a steal. Michael Thomas is also, he's one of those guys like Des Bryant where he's had a lot of tough matchups to start the year. And my favorite play, I think, of the entire slate DeAndre Hopkins versus Tennessee, 6,400. We talked about it when I was talking about Deshaun Watson at the start of the show. I just feel like his price is not correct for a guy that's seeing as many targets as he is in as good a matchup as he is. I want to say that Rich Rebar, I want to give credit to Rich. I want to say he tweeted out something saying that Tennessee has allowed a top 12 wide receiver in every single game this year, and obviously there's just one player on the on the Texans who can accomplish that. So, what do you think of Julio, Michael Thomas, and DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah, those guys are all three plays, and none of them are in my cash lineup. So we have a difference of opinion. The thing with me is that there's not a lot of value, so it's tough to spend up on wide receiver. So I'm not. So far, I'm not. Like, the guys that I really like, surprise, surprise, I went all in on this guy first 2 weeks, Larry Fitzgerald, and then week 3 when he wasn't even in the main slate. He just trolls us. It was good for my seasonal and best ball teams, but I wish I had him. I wish he did that in the daily fantasy performance. But you basically look at this Niners team that they've gotten torched, and Fitzgerald, he has been featured heavily. 13 targets, 15 targets in 2 of the 3 games. He's going to be featured heavily again. I think that those first 2 games, a little bit of variance involved. You cannot deny that he is the go-to guy here. So I'm not fading Fitzgerald. And I hope people do. I hope people have that recency bias for the first 2 weeks where he was chalk and they fade him, because I will profit off of that. So I like Fitzgerald. And then, as far as I'm looking probably at a cheaper wide receiver for that wide receiver 3 spot, Rashard Matthews, Tyrell Williams as being potential guys. And then I'm looking at Demaryius Thomas or Manny Sanders, and I want to ask you, you have to pick between those 2 guys. Who is it?
It depends on what you're playing. If it's cash, I'm playing Demaryius Thomas. If it's tournament, I'm going to play Sanders, because Sanders, so the stat I have on that, Sanders and Benny Fowler have combined for 8 red zone targets. Demaryius Thomas has 1. Like, I just feel like Demaryius Thomas is that boring wide receiver that's not going to lose you a fantasy week, but he's also not going to win you one.
Emerson has been so bad for the Raiders. So it depends on who he's lining up against, and it could be a mixture of Sanders and Thomas, but both, Emerson and Conley have been very bad for the Raiders. They've been torched consistently throughout the season. I like Demaryius Thomas, like Manny Sanders, and I'll throw another guy out there. A guy who I've had a crush on ever since last year is Adam Thielen at 5,800. I think Diggs, he gets the Slay treatment this week, and Thielen is a guy that I think could just rack up a lot of catches in the middle.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is there's a lot of injuries that we have to take into account with that. With Gerard Davis, do we know if he's playing for the Lions this week?
I have not seen, to be honest, I have not checked news this morning.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff around here on Thielen. I want to know if Case Keenum's playing. I'm not buying into Case Keenum after 1 week, guys. Like, a lot of people are saying... no, a lot of people out there are saying that Stephon Diggs is a wide receiver 1 regardless. BS. I'm calling BS on that. And the thing is, I'm a Stephon Diggs fan. People asked me before the season, like, who's a fantasy player you have on every team? Stephon Diggs was in like one of my top 3 players. I loved Stephon Diggs for the value he was, but let's not pretend that Case Keenum is going to provide, a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 3 every single week. It's just not going to happen. The game against the Bucs, the Bucs, their defense was missing like half of their playmakers, and they were like legitimate starters, not like bad starters, like legitimate ones. So I'm down. I'm not going to fully trust like Thielen. I don't think he's a bad play at all. I don't think Diggs is a bad play. Darius Slay, I don't think that he's anything special, but Quandre Diggs throughout the first couple weeks has played a lot better than he did last year. But then again, he was playing against Larry Fitzgerald, and that's a matchup. It's really weird. I would rather play someone that I can trust their quarterback than those guys. And I think you mentioned it with Fitz. He was down my list a little bit, but going down a little further, again, I'm gonna hit you up. I like talking to people that they're from the area so I can get a feel for what should I make of Eric Decker. He's 4,200. At Houston this week, who is Kevin Johnson, one of their starting corners, is down. Jonathan Joseph is dealing with a shoulder injury. Kareem Jackson, meh. I just think Houston, like, you're not going to be able to run the ball consistently on them. So what do you think of Eric Decker?
Yeah, I think that I would rather pay up probably for Rashard Matthews, because we're not really sure about Decker. He did have some catches last week. You got Corey Davis, who's been rolled out again But as far as like using him, especially in cash games, I can't do it. Like he needs to prove something first. Like Rashard Matthews looks to be the red zone receiver going back to last year, and he's $700 more, and I think he's a great value at under 5K. I would just rather have him than Decker. I did like have Matthews and Decker shares last week instead of Rashard Higgins, because I thought Higgins was just kind of a fluke. Like, don't trust guys coming off the practice squad with your hard-earned cash. Like, don't that should be a rule. So, Matthews' price tag did go up, but if you're looking at someone like Decker, I'd rather have someone like Tyrell Williams for $200 more in a better spot, potentially a more pass-heavy spot than the Titans with Decker.
Are there any other wide receivers down so with you wanting to spend up at running back, who are some of the wide receivers who are in that lower tier that you might have to stick into lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at that those guys we just mentioned with Tyrell Williams, Rashard Matthews, and even Decker as the cheap guys, and then looking at that mid 6K, the low to mid 6K range. Adam Thielen's 5,800, but you've got Fitzgerald who's 6,100. You have the Thomas and Manny Sanders 61 and 63. DeAndre Hopkins 64, and you have Marquise Lee, who's an interesting option against the Jets at 4,500. Someone that's going to get a lot of targets there. If I'm spending up, and I mentioned this earlier with the 2v2, if I'm spending up for 7,200, I like Keenan Allen. I think that he's a guy that I want to play, and then if you're doing the all-day slate, Devontae Parker is going to absolutely eat against the Saints team, even if it's just like in the fourth quarter in garbage time. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the guy
Lattimore?
This week.
Because Lattimore's going to play, they're saying.
Cutler DGAF. Like
he is 100%.
Cuddy DGAF. He doesn't care who he's going to be. He's going to throw the ball up a lot to him, especially after last week. So I know a lot of people are on Jarvis Landry. I'm still in on Devontae Parker. I think he's going to have a solid game.
Yeah. So there was news I just came across that Sean Lee missed practice for the Cowboys, and if Sean Lee is out for this game for the Cowboys, that's going to upgrade Todd Gurley's matchup. So you might want to hedge a little bit more.
Yeah.
As we're going through this, I try and keep an eye on this stuff. And the Cowboys, that's another name I wanted to throw out there. Sammy Watkins. If for whatever reason, Sammy Watkins first, he has to get cleared. He was practicing today on a limited basis, so it shows that he's headed in the right direction from the whole concussion protocol. But if he gets cleared, the Cowboys, Nolan Carroll was out last week with a concussion. I don't know if he's been cleared yet. Orlando Scandrick had to leave the game. They haven't updated that injury. So the Cowboys secondary is extremely thin. Sammy Watkins, he kind of broke out last week, and his schedule upcoming is just brutal. Again, I'm selling a lot of these Rams players right now just because I know that the schedule coming up is oh God, it's not good. But Deshaun Jackson is interesting for me.
Yeah, I was going to mention him.
Yeah, the reason I say that is Janoris Jenkins is going to be following around Mike Evans. I mean, I almost assume that. And Deshaun Jackson last year, he was able to get loose against the Giants a few times. Eli Apple has been burned in coverage nonstop. I'm just waiting for the Giants to go to Ross Cockrell, the cornerback they traded for from the Steelers, to overtake Apple because he's just been burned consistently. So Deshaun Jackson is not a cash game play, obviously, but keep your eye on him in tournaments. Let's move over to tight ends. Talk about some tight ends. Who is your favorite tight end on the slate?
I think it's going to be there's two guys, only two guys I'm considering right now, and it's Evan Ingram and Charles Clay. We talked about Ingram's 3K, Charles Clay's 3,700. So really, it just boils down to who's where I have the savings at. Do I have extra $700 to upgrade to Charles Clay, who probably has the better matchup potential, more volume there. Evan Ingram is getting there. It's 3K. The tight end position is just so different on DraftKings than it is FanDuel because of the range of outcomes. And you've got on DraftKings, I cannot spend up at tight end. Last week I had Travis Kelce on FanDuel. It didn't burn me. It didn't burn me at all just because I had the other guys that go off. But if that would have happened on DraftKings, it would have definitely burned me. Like you had Jared Cook last week, who is like under 4K tight end for me on DraftKings pretty much each and every week so that I can get those other positions in play. Tight end has just been such a boom or bust position this year.
It really has. Jack Doyle was supposed to hit last week, and he did not. Martellus Bennett has been really lackluster. I was riding with him for a couple weeks, and he's gotten the targets that I was hoping for. He just isn't on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. As for Charles Clay, I love that call. He's seen, through 3 games, he's seen a 23% target share, which is like unheard of for tight ends. I think we talked about in the start-sit show yesterday in the fact that, you don't chase touchdowns from tight ends. You chase targets. And if you know a tight end's going to see targets, obviously play them. Atlanta really struggled against tight ends last year, and it's leaked into this year. So I think that's a great call. Eric Ebron is someone that interests me. But what about Jimmy Graham? Jimmy Graham, let's pretend that Doug Baldwin misses this week. Jimmy Graham, sure, I know you're saying we don't want to pay up at tight end. It's tough to, especially with the way DraftKings is doing their pricing. But Jimmy Graham versus the Colts, I mean, if Doug Baldwin is out, are we expecting Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett to blow up?
Again, I would usually, but this is the Sunday night game in DraftKings. If you didn't know, they took out the Sunday night game of the main slate, and I'm not bitter at all, but I hate them right now.
Hold on. Now, tell me how off my rocker I am to suggest this. Tyler Kroft.
Okay, so Kroft is a guy that has consistently disappointed us back going to his days at Rutgers when we had college football DFS. But I think that the opportunity is there for 2,600. I don't mind it at all. I also don't mind chasing after Mercedes Lewis if you're going like to that well. The guy that I would rather go after, if that's the case though, is Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I'm a big ASJ fan. Someone has to catch the ball in that offense. Mm-hmm. And I think we saw last week, it's starting to come around for him. He knocked off the Russ last week. I think playing 3/4 of the snaps in his first game back, that's good news. It's really good news. I think he gets his conditioning back, and even against a tough defense, he's like a GPP play where he could have double-digit targets this week.
I actually agree with you on that, and the stat I was looking for, while you were talking, I was like, I'm going to pull this up. He saw 6 targets last week.
Yep.
That was the most targets that a Jets tight end has seen since week 6 of the 2014 season. That's basically the entire history of this coaching staff. That was the most targets a tight end's ever seen, and it was in his first game back from suspension. So I'm not opposed to that call either. The game script, you have to figure it's going to play into his favor. Robbie Anderson and Jermaine Kearse are going to be lined up on the perimeter against Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye.
What's the buzzword that everyone's been using since last year?
What is it? Is it? Wait, hold on a second. Are you talking about Maddox targeted air yards or whatever it is?
No. Funnel.
Oh, funnel defense.
Funnel. They're going to funnel the targets into the middle. So that's when Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to see a lot of love because of the funnel. Everyone's using funnel defense these days. Basically, it's not really a funnel defense like designed to go to the middle. It just means you've got really good corners. You've got a really good secondary. And so the teams aren't going to be targeting there. They're going to just pass the ball other places.
Right.
I don't buy really into the funnel defense. I just think that, again, they've got really good corners, and so teams look elsewhere, and that just happens to be in the middle. He had 6 targets last week. He played 3/4 of the snaps. Let's give Austin Seferian-Jenkins a chance. He's grown up. He doesn't curse at his coach anymore. He's been a beast ever since he's been at Washington. Let's give Austin Seferian-Jenkins a chance, starting with Jacksonville.
I also think Eric Ebron is someone you should give another chance to. I know he has not looked great in 2 of the 3 matchups.
Yeah, that's what Eric Ebron needs. He needs another chance. We need to give him an 8th chance as an industry.
Hold on a second. Hear me out on this one, okay? In divisional game, we know Eric Ebron, the Lions know this team, right? Xavier Rhodes is going to match up a lot of the time with Marvin Jones. You're going to have Golden Tate seeing a mixture. He's going to see some Trey Waynes. He's going to see some Terrence Newman. Obviously, these are cornerbacks that are solid, right? I just think that this is an area of the field that they can be exposed, Minnesota. If there's one area, because we know that Detroit's not going to run the ball. If we know that Marvin Jones isn't getting separation, we know that Golden Tate's going to be contained somewhat. This production has to go somewhere. Matthew Stafford's playing too good to pass this up. 3,100. Kitchen, I will say this. Did you know that last year, Ebron played 15 games? There was just one of those games where he scored fewer than 8 PPR points. No other tight end in the NFL can say that.
Yeah, I'm a big Eric Ebron fan.
You sound like it.
If you can tell, he's burned me a few times.
Couple.
And I do think this is one of those times where I won't have a lot of exposure to him. He'll go off as for the reasons you just mentioned. Just like it with no Anquan Bolden this year, I just thought he would be a lock for some big productivity. You know, he had that 1 week, but I think this might be another week where he just goes off, and I'm just like shaking my head like, good for him. I should have played him. You know, it made a lot of sense for me to play him. But then again, just the inconsistency for where he's at. We'll see. I might come around by the time Sunday law comes around. I might come around to some hedge shares with Eric Ebron.
There you go. Jared Cook is another person that you might want to hedge some with against Denver. He's been seeing a lot of targets, and obviously we know their cornerback situation out there in Denver, the funnel that they have out there in Denver.
Last week was the only week I will use Jared Cook. I will not do it for the remainder. I feel like I got very lucky with Jared Cook last week. I'm not using him for the remainder of the season. I had my one time. I enjoyed it. Moving on.
No, but no, it's just Jared Cook. We've been there before. We all know we've been there. But again, this week with the targets he's seeing, it's impossible for me not to even mention him. But yeah, I would much rather play Ebron at 3,100. I also think Evan Ingram. I think that was a good call at 3,000 against Tampa. But my issue with Ingram is that if this defense is really, if Brent Grimes doesn't play again, I mean, how do you not play Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard and anybody else? Like, Evan Ingram won't need to be targeted so much in that game. Whereas if Brent Grimes plays, I would actually upgrade Ingram's matchup. Going over to defensive special teams, is there anyone that sticks out to you? I think for me, it's Arizona, 3,200 at home against San Francisco. And I Arizona's defense has really been a major letdown. That's the best way for me to put it this season. They haven't really showed up where you wanted them to, but at the same time, San Francisco, they're going to take away Pierre Garçon, which is like the biggest weapon they have. Arizona's run defense, if there's one thing that they've done well, it's stop the run. So if you take away Carlos Hyde, you take away Pierre Garçon, what do they have? So I like Arizona. Yeah,
another situation, I think Arizona's fine. Another situation where the Seahawks would have been an amazing play if DraftKings didn't take that game away from us. The other teams that I'm looking at, though, you know, you mentioned Sean Lee, but the Dallas Cowboys at home against the Rams, we still don't know like how legit this Rams offense is. And let's just face it that defense, you have to get a little bit lucky with it. It's kind of like kicker. There's a lot of variance involved. You know, one scoop and score, one interception, one pick six, and all of a sudden, like that team has value. So I don't like spending up on defense. It has to be like a really nut spot for defense. So like I'm not spending up on Jacksonville against the Jets just because you're not sure what's going to happen. The Cowboys are 2,500 at home. This could definitely be a situation where, you know, you could pair him with Zeke in cash games. That's what I've done so far. I just do not like spending up. So the Cowboys or the Chargers, even against Philly at home, I think are excellent options where you don't have to, you know, spend your whole budget and you can use that extra 700 or, you know, 1,900 on another position, upgrading it.
Well, does it concern you that the Cowboys are coming off 6 days rest, whereas the Rams are coming off 10 days with the Thursday night game?
No, because you still have like Jared Goff as the quarterback, and you're still like playing at home. Jared Goff has been really good this season, and I believe that he is not as bad as what he was last season. But also, this is a second-year quarterback that was like historically bad last year, that is capable of making bad choices, bad decisions, playing in Dallas. You know, which is it can be an intimidating place to play. I just think that for 2,500, I'm looking at any team that has like any sort of chance at having a return for touchdown or a turnover for touchdown or like some sacks. And I think that you get a guy like Goff in there at 2,500, you don't have to spend up. He could definitely be that way. So right now in cash games, I've got Zeke and the Cowboys as that correlation play.
I love the Zeke one, man. And it's interesting because if they pull away from the game, they're going to force Jared Goff to throw it a little bit more, and he's not going to be as comfortable with like a lead. He's going to be playing from behind. So I think that's an interesting call. I like it. I will play around with that in my cash game lineups because I was pretty set on using Arizona, but I will look at that because it's definitely interesting because I'm going to be playing Zeke. So this is going to wrap up the show, man. It's been fun.
Yep. It's been really fun. Did Dave tell you have to wrap it up?
He warned me. He said, don't go over 50 minutes, Mike. Don't do it. And I think we're already over that time. So I need to end the show here.
All right. Well, I'm a big fan of FantasyPros. I use them for all my seasonal leagues for baseball and football, as far as their management stuff. So there's a plug there for you guys. And come on over, check us out at RotoGrinders. Follow me at SoccerDave. And it's been a pleasure because I love FantasyPros and I love Mike Tagliere. So, Mike, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for coming on, man. I definitely appreciate it. We'll be talking to you, I'm sure, later in the season. We'll get some of your hedging takes that we need to get before we get out of here. But thanks again for Dave for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Draft and PristineAuction.com. Check them out, guys, and we will see you next week. But until then, lights out.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.